All right. Well, we are live. Chris May, Supreme Golf. Thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate you being, my first guest on this new. I'm not even going to call it a series yet. But let's just call it a great conversation. I am calling it Revenue Alert because, as Noteefy is in the alerting business, and everybody always wants to get that revenue alert. So I figured, we can have a great chat today. Would love to learn a little bit experiences, a little bit more about the craft and the art and the science behind what it is that you do, driving top line for golf courses and different facilities, and overall just learning more about what it is that you do every day and how you do it. So thanks for joining me, man.
So thanks for the invitation. Honored to be the inaugural guest, and look forward to reviewing this episode and watching the other ones as they come out. It's always fun to listen to everyone and see what the different viewpoints and strategies are.
Awesome. Well, Chris, appreciate it. I know you wear many hats, but maybe before we dive in, would love to just hear a little bit more about your journey. Tell me more about how'd you get into the game? How'd you get into the role that you're in now? And did you know that you wanted to be a revenue manager when you grew up?
Yeah, I took a rather circuitous route to the golf industry. I went to school with every intention of being a doctor. So, I majored in biological sciences, and as I went through my career in college, I realized through work study programs, the hospital and things like that probably wasn't the right fit for me. And so I kind of pivoted. I took on econ, and then I tried to play baseball for a little while after school. That didn't necessarily pan out, but I found myself in hospital administration, sort of on the business end of clinical trials and working with Genentechs of the world, that sort of thing on clinical cancer trials. So data has always been a love of mine. I enjoy big data sets. I got to do that in the hospital administration side, but going to work every day and being the second or third person a person that just found out they have cancer, and you have to talk to them in that sort of setting, wore on me. It wasn't very fun. So I was looking around, kind of looking at other industries, and my sister-in-law of all people, she was a bev cart girl, kind of part-time at Lakewood Country Club here in Southern California. And they were looking for pro shop manager, AGM of sorts. And so I threw my hat in the ring. I started working in the shop on weekends, and eventually the assistant general manager role came up. I took that, kind of got thrown into operations. I was a GM within a year and a half of that at a course called Summit Point. Now I think it's called the Bay Club up in Milpitas, San Francisco area. And that's kind of when I started really looking at tee sheet rates, occupancy, that sort of thing. And, within a year or so, American Golf was looking to beef up their revenue management department and asked if I would join. And so about 1 year after I took the GM job, I was back in Santa Monica at the corporate office on the revenue management team, which I spent a good 10 years there. I was VP of revenue management when I left American Golf and joined Supreme. So kind of a roundabout way, but that's kind of how I got there. And, kind of got lucky along the way. And when I was first in AGM, I got to see the transition from paper tee sheets to Easy Links and IBS, and got to see essentially how the sausage was made on the revenue side, and was just in the right place at the right time to learn a lot about sort of the initial tee sheet management, booking engines, yield management as I kind of grew through the career.
That's amazing. I don't know how many Ivy League educated baseball players who were going to be doctors there are in the field of golf management, and that's quite the journey, bopping around. And as a fellow Californian who went to school in Pennsylvania, who had never picked up a golf club, I mean, I think if I remember, you were a baseball football player. So as a baseball wrestler, I think you and I both probably get some funny looks when we dig into it. But what is it exactly that you do today, right? You're the senior vice president of revenue management for Supreme Golf. You mentioned to me that you're really a product guy. So what is a day in the life look like for Chris May?
Yeah. So yeah, my official title is Senior Vice President, Supreme Golf. I'm not a big title guy. It's kind of just flashy for when I talk to folks or hand out business cards. None of us are really title folks. We're all kind of just trying to do what we can to make lives easier for operators and make golf courses more money. We really do care about the industry and the operators. So, that's really our focus. So, I'm really a product guy. I head up the revenue management strategy consulting wing of Supreme Golf, and so I'm dynamically pricing, running revenue strategies for about 90 clubs, 90 18-hole equivalents at this point. Anything from small municipal 9-hole walking only facilities to places like PGA West or Legends in Myrtle Beach. So it kind of runs the gamut from as small as you can imagine to as complex as you can imagine. So, that really fills my day, running, just making sure, we got the ones and twos continuing to run, making sure the algorithms are pushing out the right rates, talking to GMs, how they feel about where their products are priced and situated in the market. So really that's kind of my day, is, looking at dashboards and trying to read the tea leaves and make sure that we're going where we need to go, pricing and revenue wise, as far as 2 and 3 years out in advance at some point. So that's really what, takes my day.
That's awesome. And I've got to see some of the Chris May in action. I would say, let's call him mad scientists of revenue management presentations. And I think it's a lot more than ones and twos and X's and O's for you, because maybe that biomedical scientist comes out a little bit in the T sheet data. But it's pretty cool to see for you. I know you're very thoughtful about, average green fees, dynamic pricing, new tools, new technologies, weather, all of the maybe 15 factors that go into whether or not a golf course is filled and what rate they're pushing out there. As you're thinking about 2024, I mean, we're in an interesting spot, right? NGF just put out a report, fourth consecutive year of over 500 million rounds. December, 23% year over year rounds growth. Maybe that's, weather attributed, but it seems from everything we've heard from Greg Nathan and team that, hey, the party's still going. It's up and to the right. And there's no storm clouds we've, at least heard about or seen on the horizon. So as you think about 2024, are you feeling bullish? Are you feeling like, we're still partying on, or are you seeing storm clouds coming? And how are you thinking about the golf revenue industry right now, especially for daily fee?
Yeah. When you listen to Greg Nathan and Pellucid and those folks that come to the PGA show every year and kind of give their overlook, right? The first thing I'm always reminded of is golf is like real estate, local. That's the only thing that matters, right? So when we talk about national averages and total rounds and weather, the national data, while it can be comforting, you really kind of have to look region by region to see, what's going on for your own golf course. So I would always, introduce that caveat before I talk about national trends or averages, things like that. And to your point about December, I make it a rule never to get excited about Q1 or Q4. There's just too much weather variance from year to year. You have a good year, you have a bad year. Say, I work with a course in Tahoe. They did really well in the days they had, but their season was just 20% shorter this year. So they lost year over year while their strategies were fine, right? So, you kind of take all of that with a little bit of grain of salt, but, there's lots of reasons to be excited, right? 2023, 530 million rounds, obviously a record, last 20 years or so, super exciting. The even more exciting piece for me is that was done with sort of the continued right sizing of supply, meaning there are still golf courses leaving the industry. And so, one of my favorite metrics, occupancy percentage, is going up, and it's 25, 30%, sometimes more than it was pre-COVID. So that speaks to me that the facilities are healthier. The industry is healthier in terms of the real estate and the supply we have. And, at the courses I work with that are really concerned about forward booking, wholesalers, packages, vacation golf, there's still a lot of money out there, right? There's still a lot of stimulus money that hasn't been spent. And so, that piece of the business into 24 is even stronger than this year. So there's a lot of positives to take from that. But at the same time, local municipalities, short courses, the COVID dust is wearing off a little bit. You're starting to see some softness in the weekday afternoons. And so, it's time to maybe return a little bit to our loyalty programs, retention, those sorts of strategies where, really good travel golf is probably going to continue to be good for the next 18 months. But, on the other side, there are some softening pieces of the local market that draw attention as well.
Interesting. So you used the word strategies a few times, and it seems like you started to allude to some of them. You talked about loyalty, you talked about retention. I know you're a product guy, you're a technology guy, and you spend your time thinking about how technology and tools can augment, the strategies, right? There's you can have a great strategy, but when I don't know what the saying is, when the bullets start flying, right? you throw the plan out the window, right? Thankfully, golf is a little bit less dramatic. I don't think there's any bullets flying, hopefully. But as you think about 2024 and tools, tactics, and strategies for revenue managers, what are boil it down to the big rocks, the big things that every golf course operator needs to be thinking about for their business? Obviously, you mentioned local, but what are some of the low-hanging fruit things that are table stakes now at this point in 2024 golf revenue management?
Yeah, I think the dynamic pricing conversation has finally evolved to a point where everyone sort of understands at least what it is if they're not already doing it. And so, we've seen a lot of adopters 2022, 2023 of dynamic pricing. And so, like you said, some of the low hanging fruit, the stuff that's obvious, we talk about apex hours, your weekend mornings, the Fridays leading into holidays, things like that. You've probably, if you're on the cutting edge, you've probably already maximized those to some extent. And so you're not going to see immediate heavy gains in sort of the traditional areas of the tee sheet. But one of the less talked about areas where dynamic pricing really helps is in the shoulder seasons, right? So if you're talking about the desert Southwest, September, October, May, June, where clubs used to take sort of blanket shoulder pricing, reduce the rates 20, 30%. We're finding with dynamic pricing, you leave your sort of your peak pricing in the algorithm. And when you do have good weather in the shoulders, you maximize the rate on those good days. And if you have hot or cold days, well, then the algorithm's automatically looking at the weather and kind of shifting back to that shoulder rate. So I think if you're looking for opportunity in a higher occupancy tee sheet, like you may have had this year, you got to start looking at your shoulders. You have to start looking at extending some of your holiday periods, right? The Christmas season. A lot of folks are, going to sort of a full peak holiday pricing here in the Southwest, all the way from the middle of December through the 4th or 5th of January in certain cases. So, the days that you're taking a higher rate, a peak rate, a weekend rate, need to increase. And then, kind of on the flip side, if you're pushing rate in those shoulder areas, the ones that are becoming more busy, you have to look at your open occupancy in the afternoons, where your RevPAR might be single digits in a lot of cases. Golf courses tend to empty pretty quickly in the afternoons. You can shoot a cannon through a lot of the clubs I work with after 2:00, and so your RevPAR is really low. That's an opportunity for you to grow into your player development programs, use subscription membership, that sort of thing. Sort of look at the customer in terms of their lifetime value or their yearly value rather than just a single rate on a peak day.
Okay, awesome. I heard kind of three themes in there, right? Number one, you talked a lot about dynamic pricing. I've heard, just being on the circuit here, going to the different conferences and hearing, staying plugged in. Dynamic pricing is clearly top of mind. So, dynamic pricing, I heard, subscription software, I heard, afternoon loyalty program, I heard. Could you maybe quickly touch on like the actual tools that you put into practice if you're comfortable with each of those kind of buckets? Because obviously we want this to be, as tactical as possible for folks out there. Who should they, if a operator wants to get into the dynamic pricing space, who have you seen that you really like? And, within loyalty and maybe subscription as well, what are you seeing out there very tactically that folks can take a look at?
I think on the dynamic pricing front, there are really two industry leaders at this point. The one that Supreme works with is PriceSwing. We have a white labeled version of PriceSwing that I use in conjunction with our clients, which comes with some of my services and reporting, which I like to think there's some value in that. Or you can develop a relationship with PriceSwing directly. The other is Sagacity. That one, both of those algorithms, if you will, take into account most of the key metrics that you need to price your clubs. And so I think those two currently are kind of far and away the top two choices currently out there. I know that there are some new products coming out. I know Golf Now has a product that they're itching to launch, and then there's some other new entries as well. But I think at this point, PriceSwing and Sagacity are the two main tools for straight dynamic pricing. As far as subscription goes, I'm going to throw our hat in the ring. Supreme's membership sits on top of just about all the major tee sheets out there and does a really good job of managing member rights to and from the tee sheet, pulling people out when the credit card fails, or adding people into the tee sheet, making sure they get their correct rates at the pro shop counter. We also have a lot of technology built in, like your Netflix, your bigger subscription companies, where we can go out and get credit cards, for folks that might be expiring. So it kind of keeps tabs on your membership and it just helps with the administration in a high velocity membership. I mean, some of the clubs I work with have 2,000, 3,000 members in these programs. And so when you get to that type of velocity, it can be hard to manage within sort of the tee sheet billing software. So I'll throw that out there as sort of a little plug for Supreme. But those are the products that we use day in, day out.
So you've got you get the tee sheet to power the course, or the GMS. I've heard this saying a lot, POS, GMS, right? The real technology powering the course. And then you've got these layered on solutions that are almost point solutions to specialize in one specific thing. And so you mentioned dynamic pricing and those two market leaders, and maybe taking a little bit different approach. And then Supreme, I know, emphasizing a lot of distribution as well as the subscription element of helping get folks to, that maybe my nerdy self, I'll say like the LTV to CAC, right? Making sure that the lifetime value of the golfer, maybe they, instead of 1, 3, 5 times, they're playing 5, 10, 15 times at the course. Curious from your point of view as well, kind of last one you talked about around loyalty. What's your take on the afternoon leagues? Because anecdotally, I've never participated in a league, but I think I would want to, right? It's 9-hole afternoon, maybe like during the summer from 5 to 7 socially. I think it'd be fun, but in this LA market, I don't know, maybe I've never had an opportunity. But what's your take on that to kind of fill the afternoon lines? I know Spark, I think they just passed 2,000 courses, which I saw, which looks great. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's super interesting, right? We've there are a few clubs that I've worked with in the American Golf portfolio that have partnered some virtual leagues with the SCGA, the Southern California Golf Association, right? It's the local chapter of the USGA. They are, I think, in my opinion, far and away the most active, kind of sub-chapter of the USGA, and actually paying attention to public rounds, municipal play, kind of trying to integrate some of the technology that they bring to the table into the courses in terms of driving handicap participation, things like that. And if you're in the podcast world, you hear a lot about the lack of a third place in our lives, right? A lot of folks still work from home. There used to be, you go to work, you go to your bowling league's your third place to hang out. Well, golf, provides that as well as a way to meet folks. And so some of these virtual leagues, the Sparks, what the SUGA is doing, provides an interesting way for folks to get out and play golf, with, outside of their family, outside of, kind of their normal group. And I'm all for it. It's the programs that we piloted with the SCGA at the American Golf Clubs were super popular. And, we provided, Supreme provided some incentives, some prizes for participating. Folks got handicaps, and the course got some revenue. So it was sort of a triple win for everyone who was involved. And I can't say enough about how important that sort of next step is in terms of competitive golf, right? I mean, maybe 15% of the players out there have a handicap or even know where to start. And programs like this can, kind of incent folks to go down that road, play some competitive golf, learn the rules a little more and have some fun while they're doing it.
Awesome. Yeah. I'll even plug, kind of almost an extension of that, right? I know you're a SoCal guy. So if you go to the Top Golf in El Segundo, they've got the lakes, which is, 10 hole, par 3 wrapping around it. And it's almost like I'd almost say, I like to use this phrase, t-shirt sizes, small, medium, large, or like crawl, walk, run, where Top Golf is really for anyone. You could be a first-time golfer, you could have never played, and you can go to effectively the bowling alley and have a blast. And then maybe if that's the small, then the medium would be, getting out on the lakes and, just having a wedge in your hand and hitting 100 yards and almost getting that green grass feel from being in, the call it the simulator / range game. And then lastly, finally elevating into the being a golfer on 18-hole facility. But maybe that league is kind of the medium plus, right? Tweener.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can kind of speak to the junior scene, right? My son goes to a birthday party at Top Golf probably once every other month, right? He's there all the time, and his friends see the lakes, and they're kind of interested, and so we've gotten together and taken a couple of foursomes to the lakes instead of going to Top Golf, and so I think where Top Golf is combined with a green grass facility, there's some crossover there. Maybe a little more than what our industry or what the green grass industry thinks, but at least in my own anecdotal world, Top Golf is good for green grass, I believe.
Excellent. A couple more for you. As you think about your experience, as you think about 2024, where we're heading, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see revenue managers making or general managers making when they think about driving growth for their facilities?
There are three, I think, that I come across pretty frequently. The first is not being on top of data entry at the pro shop level. I can't tell you how many tee sheets I look at every day that, the captain's in the tee sheet, John Smith, and it's guest 2, guest 3, guest 4, member 2, member 3, member 4. It's really, really hard to do revenue management without good data. It's garbage in, garbage out, absolutely. And so, if you're thinking about developing a revenue management plan, a strategy, you really need to take 6 months and clean up your data and make sure that everybody that's coming to play is in your tee sheet, has an email, and so they have a playing history, and how often that person is coming and what their yearly revenue is with you. That's the number one thing, is data entry, and it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Small clubs, big clubs. It's one of those things that just kind of gets left behind on a busy day, and it can't. That's the number one. The second one is too much reliance on the competitive set, the CMA. Every time I hear CMA, I cringe a little bit. I feel like our industry loves to look at other people's papers and then kind of say, well, this course down the street is a little better. So, their green fee is $75. I know that course down the street's a dog track and they're $40. I kind of fit in the middle on 55. We do way too much of that before we even begin to understand how many rounds we have to sell because of our weather, how much occupancy we have, what our RevPAR is as a result of those two metrics. And, even with some of the technology that's out there now with things like Noteefy and our price wing tools, we don't give enough credence to the golfer to let them tell us how much our course is worth. So, too much dependence on trying to position yourself to your competitors without looking at your own RevPARs and CMA and the opportunities right in front of you on your own tee sheet, I think can be a mistake as well. And then the last one kind of ties into that. There's too much focus right now on average rate. Dynamic pricing is part of it, but we've gotten really enamored over the last 3 or 4 years with raising our average rate without looking at what sort of the undercurrent implications of a higher rate are, right? If just simple economics, if you're charging more, there are going to be fewer people out there that are going to be able to play that rate. So yes, pushing average rate is great, but unless you have sort of the undercard programs, your loyalty programs, your annual passes, that sort of stuff underneath, building a really good layer cake or foundation to those high rates, it's really hard to drive rate aggressively on the top end and have that work out to a positive revenue sum on the bottom. So those are kind of the 3 that I see the most.
Fascinating. Yeah, I've heard a lot about problem number 1, where the captain, will make the tee time, and then there's 75% data leak there, if you will, where hey, you can't even contact the rest of them. I'll give you one quick short anecdote where I heard this, and I'm still kind of scratching my head. But obviously, with Noteefy, folks sign up and they're getting onto the course. Theoretically, the only people that should be signing up for Noteefy are existing customers of that operator. But we've had one MCO who did a side-by-side comparison of the 2 data sets and actually found 30% new emails in our data set compared to the courses. And so the question is, well, who are these people and where are they coming from? And really our best guess as to why there was 30% net new emails for the operator was, if somebody finds an 8 a.m. tee time and they invite their 3 buddies are going to ask, hey, how'd you get this time? Oh, I used this new Noteefy thing and it worked great. And oh, wait, let me sign up for that. Next thing you know, you just acquired 75% potential new emails. So that was kind of an interesting one. We're still figuring that out. I don't know if you have any good guesses. I'm curious. We'll have to dig into it with your facilities as well.
I have a really good one to start with, and it has to do with channel switching, right? So if I go play at Simi Hills as a Golf Now member, Golf Now is pushing a no reply email to the system. And usually an Orlando address, right? So the metadata for that customer is usually not passed through that particular channel. In the case of Noteefy, if I go to Simi Hills, I can't find a time, I sign up on Noteefy, I actually want to hear from someone, I have to put a real email address in, right? Yeah. So if you're sharing that data with Simi Hills, then that's a win-win too, right? Because now you've got real data, you've got actionable data you can communicate with customer on, as opposed to certain channels that information doesn't get to the tee sheet.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to, I'm sure once we get enough of your properties ramped, you're going to be like a mad scientist in the lab digging in as well. And I'm excited to see that. Last question for you, what's your advice for folks who want to get into the industry, want to get into revenue management? Maybe they're current PGA members and they're pros and they're more on the teaching side, or maybe they're more on the operation side and they want to get into the golf business. Running golf courses, being accountable for P&Ls and top lines. What's your advice of folks who want to try and break in and get into being an SVP one day?
Yeah. So I would say, like you said, revenue management it's part art, part science, right? The best analogy I've heard for it from actually it's from a hotelier, but they said it's very much like music, right? When you look at music, the notes, the frequencies, the vibrations and stuff, that's all physics and math, right? But then you've got to put a song together and somebody's got to play it, right? So generally the revenue manager is putting together the song, the operators, the marketers are playing the tune, right? So if you're in an organization, you're looking at wanting to dive into more of this, revenue management really kind of sits in the triangle between accounting, marketing, and operations, right? So you've got to have good cross-functional relationships with all three of those parties. And so that's kind of where to start, right? You want to, in a lot of places, a lot of organizations, all of those varying departments are very siloed. There's not a whole lot of communication oftentimes, but sort of at the corporate level. So you want to start breaking down those silos, kind of developing those cross-functional relationships with all three of those parties, so that when you have a strategy, how it's going to get to the public, how it's going to be put into play at the course, and on the back end, the T sheets, sort of the boring stuff, that it's going to get to the right GL accounts and the right places on the P&L line and make an impact. So I would recommend anyone who really wants to kind of get into the nitty gritty, start there, start developing relationships with your accountants, your marketers, your GMs, kind of hear what the pain points are, and be that conduit where you can improve the communication between those departments.
Excellent. Well, Chris May, thank you so much for joining me today. Our inaugural episode number 1, revenue alert. Hopefully we can help you get a lot more revenue alerts up and to the right. Let's keep up with all the success golf has had. Thank you
Absolutely.
for welcoming me into the industry. As I'm not a bioscientist, I'm not as smart as you, but at least I'm having a blast, and I appreciate the time and insights today.
That's what it's about. It's fun, right? I'm not going to a hospital anymore. Going to a place where folks have fun, right? That's a big part of it. You hit it on the head. So hopefully this is informative to folks out there, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you.